Welcome, everyone, to SI Media with Jimmy Traina. Thank you so much for listening. We have one of our regulars, James Andrew Miller, on the show this week. He, of course, wrote the book on ESPN and wrote a book about HBO. So Jim is going to come on and discuss the entire insanity of the week at ESPN, with Pat McAfee calling out executive Norby Williamson for leaking things and sabotaging a show. Then we have the whole Pat McAfee, Aaron Rodgers situation at ESPN. It's the 25th anniversary of The Sopranos this week. Curb Your Enthusiasm comes back February 4th. So that is the entire conversation with Jim Miller, who knows all of those topics better than anyone. And then following Jim, Sal Licata joins me for our weekly Traina Thoughts segment. I know a lot of you are into Sal's house hunting, so he gives us a big update, and then we go through the NFL playoff games and discuss some other things. So that is this week's show, and we'll get to it in a sec. Before we do get to it, just a reminder, if you missed any past episodes of SI Media with Jimmy Traina, go into the archives, check them out, subscribe to the podcast, leave a review on Apple. Subscribing and leaving a review helps tremendously, and if you guys can do that, I would appreciate it. All right. Let's get to this week's show now. Jim Miller, followed by Traina Thoughts and Sal Licata, all right here, right now on SI Media with Jimmy Traina. All right, joining me now, not a better guest to have on this week, given the drama at ESPN, the anniversary of The Sopranos, and the upcoming final season of Curb Your Enthusiasm. Woo-hoo! He wrote books on ESPN and wrote books on HBO, and he's a regular on this podcast. Author, writer, journalist, Jim Andrew Miller. Jim, how are you?
Good, man. How you doing? Thanks for having me.
Good. And I won't say Happy New Year because Larry said January 3rd.
Oh, no, we're way past the deadline, dude.
January 3rd, according to Larry.
Yeah.
Now, I'd love to just talk about The Sopranos and Curb, but all hell is broken loose at the worldwide leader. So let's let's discuss that first.
In the morning after the national championship, 2 days after week 18, and in the days leading up to the NFL playoffs, the two words you don't want to hear on your ESPN show are Dr. Fauci.
I haven't heard that name in ages, too. Let me start by saying this, because maybe you can appreciate this. Let me start at the top by giving a shout out to Josh Krulowitz, because Josh is a PR person at ESPN who right in, I guess, mid to late December got a promotion. Chris LaPaca, who's there forever, very nice guy, dealt with him, great guy. He's no longer at ESPN. Josh Krulowitz, who's been at ESPN a long time, I've had no problems with either of those guys. I know there's a lot of theories out there that like people who do what I do and PR people battle, and there are some who are not great, but those two guys are both great. And Josh Krulowitz got a promotion, like I said, mid or late December, to become like the top PR person at ESPN. Yep. And look at his first couple of weeks on the job. Can you believe it? Poor Josh.
Well, you might as well get used to it, because ESPN throughout its history always has this way of, when things are too calm, you just turn the egg timer over and something's bound to happen.
But this seems even more intense than usual. I mean, and here's the funny thing, that ESPN's getting great ratings for the NFL and Monday Night Football, great ratings for college football. And then there's all this side drama, which I think is overblown. But let me start with this on that. Before we get into what happened and all that, what are you hearing? You're plugged in. You have a million sources. You know people inside of Bristol. What are you hearing from the rank and file at ESPN about this? Are people embarrassed? Are people jealous that McAfee could get away with calling out an executive in Norby Williamson? I know there's a lot of people who are happy that McAfee called out Norby Williamson. What are you hearing from the people at ESPN about the past week?
I mean, look, I think, first of all, ESPN's a big place, right? And so anytime, you can go back to Playmakers, you can go back to Barstool Sports. There's always stuff that's happening at ESPN where there's a group inside that thinks that this is ridiculous or it shouldn't be done, and they're against it. I think that you have to realize, though, that a lot of people inside, even if they disagree with what ultimately is decided by the company, they either shut their mouths or they just bitch about it at the cafeteria. They don't go public with it. They don't leak things, although that's happened in the past too, right? So I think that right now what people are saying inside is it's kind of like what you just suggested, which is that there's so much good news and there's so much disruption going on in their core business approach or whatever, that to be sitting around talking about Jeffrey Epstein and Dr. Fauci and Aaron Rodgers at this point is like, wow, how did this happen? But it happened because they got a great property in Pat, and whether or not you're a fan of Pat or not, you have to understand, you can appreciate the fact that he's been enormously successful. He's got a big following. They paid him a lot of money, and this is what happens. It's like you got to take the bad with the good. And I think everybody's kind of like right now it's over it. I think this morning Pat announced that Aaron's not going to be coming on the show for the rest of the NFL. And that's not surprising given yesterday's unfortunate sequence. One of the things that you got to realize also is that people inside ESPN are like, when you're planning a show, even if you're going to give Aaron Rodgers carte blanche to say whatever he wants, you got to dude, we don't want to do a half an hour of that. And we don't want to go deep into immunization and virology and everything else. Let's try and, strategize about what this appearance is going to be like. But evidently that wasn't either the nature of the agreement or that's not how they handled it. But I don't think anybody walked away from yesterday's appearance by Aaron thinking, okay, this is great. This is what this show and this is what ESPN needs.
Yeah, see, I don't know if I always believe that just because I mean, listen, people are pissed off if they're anti-Aaron Rodgers about what he said and did, like you said, Fauci and but the attention that McAfee spot gets is off the charts. I mean, I think a lot of places would kill for that. Maybe ESPN does. I don't know. I'm so cynical. I have a hard time believing that deep down at the end of the day, they're that upset. That's just me, but you can educate me on that, I guess.
I mean, look, I don't know. I think Pat wants to do the work that that he's been doing. And I don't think he wants to get trapped down a rabbit hole where 25 minutes or whatever it is of a show is being talked about vaccines. Right. And that just doesn't, especially on the day after the national championship. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. But that would be a very sinister short-term strategy.
Well, I don't think he necessarily wants to talk about vaccines. I think the Aaron Rodgers spot is what it is. It's become a thing that every aggregator, every website, every blog tunes in. They write about every single word Aaron Rodgers said. Aaron Rodgers is playing the game. He throws out all this stuff that he knows is going to get attention, and then he does his word salad, wordplay semantics. Oh, I didn't say this. I didn't mean this. I didn't, there is no better person I've seen in my life, better at playing the word game than Aaron Rodgers. He's a master at it. Just puts stuff out, says things, and then it's, I didn't say this. I didn't mean this. The media's twisting, and it's all semantics and word salads, but he, and then wants to act like the victim. Like he plays the game perfectly.
Yeah, maybe. I just think it gets exhausting for everybody else who has to then shove the toothpaste back in the tube.
Right.
And deconstruct the words. And he didn't actually accuse Jimmy of this, but he did say this or whatever. I don't know. That seems like, it doesn't seem like a lot of fun.
Right. I agree.
Like something that, a sports fan, wants to spend their time doing. That's all.
I can tell you though, from the numbers, people click on all that stuff.
No. Look, for the majority of the season, it worked. I think that this last bit, I think that I'm just talking about yesterday, really. I'm not talking about overall.
Okay.
Talking about yesterday. That's all.
I got you. Well, let me, I want to, I wanted to get into the Norby Williamson stuff more than the Aaron Rodgers stuff, because to me, the Aaron Rodgers stuff is what it is. He's going to do the show, and ESPN really doesn't have the control over it. It's Pat's show. They license the show. It's not an ESPN show. I think a lot of people don't realize that. But the fact that Pat would call out Norby Williamson, a top executive at ESPN. Well, let me first do this for the people listening who may not be in the weeds as we are. Jimmy Pitaro is the head guy at ESPN. He runs everything. And Pat mentioned two men. He mentioned Norby Williamson for sabotaging his show and leaking stuff to the press. And he mentioned that he loves and has a good relationship with Burke Magnus. What is the Norby Burke Magnus power structure at ESPN? Because it's Jimmy Pitaro at the top, so it doesn't matter about anyone else really. But give me the Magnus Norby dynamic there.
I mean, the most instructive thing to know is that Norby works for Burke.
Okay.
Burke is Jimmy Pitaro's number two,
right,
and he has been there for over 2 decades. He's incredibly good at his job, and I think that he has, the respect of virtually everyone in ESPN. And so Norby, for those who don't know, I mean, has been there since the 80s, I used to joke that if, God forbid, there was an atomic blast in Bristol, the only 2 things that would be left would be Norby and the crickets, but he's a survivor. There's no doubt about it. He's had a multitude of jobs. He's been very, very effective for people like Keith Olbermann and others. Look, if you're talent in Bristol and Norby likes you, it is the gift that keeps giving, because he protects his people and he knows how to wield power, and he knows all the secret places on that campus, and he's very good at it. He's very agenda driven. But if you're like Jamel Hill, and you're not someone who he appreciates, good luck with that.
Right. So I found it fascinating that Pat said what he said, and said that Norby was sabotaging his show and leaking ratings. And there was, at least that we know of, zero discipline for Pat, because it just seems like
he's not an ESPN employee.
I understand that. But so do you think there was no discipline because ESPN can't do anything, or ESPN didn't want to do anything?
I mean, look, he's not an ESPN employee, and I think that's the big dividing line. If he had been an ESPN employee, they might have, I don't know what they would have done, but they probably would have done something, because they don't want talent trashing executives. What a surprise, on their air. Or they could have decided, look, the biggest leverage ESPN has over Pat McAfee is they could just decide they don't want to put it on their platforms. I mean, that sounds extreme, but that's always their option. They could also try and get out of the deal. But I don't think, the punishment has to fit the crime.
Okay, so if ESPN can't do anything to Pat because he's not an ESPN employee, then Pat can say whatever he wants about Norby every single day if he wanted to. I mean, at some point, so it's either pull the plug on Pat's show or we can't do anything? Is that
No, because you're forgetting about something, which I think Pat has showed in several appearances now. That, I mean, he is a team player. I mean, he understands what a locker room is. He understands that I think he actually likes being at ESPN. He did mention his support for Burke and for Jimmy. I think that he's not coming there to blow the place up or to take advantage of the fact that he's not an employee. So he's going to, use every occasion he can to trash the place or cause disruption. I think he'd rather be known right now as somebody who's got a great show and who's doing an excellent job, rather than somebody who's poking his finger in the eye of management. And I also don't believe that Pat, when he mentioned Norby, fully understood just how much of an outlier that kind of statement is, and the fact that it would get picked up to the degree and become the kind of thing that it did.
Well, I thought it was very calculated. I mean, he made sure to say it when the ESPN portion of his show was over, and it was just on YouTube and ESPN Plus, not on linear. He knew he was going to be on game day on Monday. He knew he was doing a alternate telecast of the national title game on Monday. I think it was very smart that he did it when he did it, because what was he? I mean, ESPN wasn't going to do anything that weekend. And then by now it's too late. Now anyway, the Aaron Rodgers thing superseded it.
I get it. I just think that, look, he doesn't need me to be an apologist for him, but let's remember something. He was totally pissed off about what he perceived to be a leak, and not only the leak of the numbers, but the narrative attached to the numbers. Right. I mean, that was an agenda-driven leak. If you look at those ratings, you can convict or acquit the Pat McAfee Show. There's some bad news or there's some good news attached to it. And it was clear that that was leaked to damage the show and to damage the narrative surrounding the show. So if you or I were hosting that show and that happened, we'd be pissed off too, you know? And so I think that, he wanted to send a strong signal. And I think, look, one of the things that has been funny to hear from people in Bristol is so many talent and former talent individuals were like thrilled by it because they could never do that. They could never call out Norby.
Well, I want to be clear. I am 100% Team McAfee on this. I'm 100% Team McAfee on this. And I think if, he thought Norby was leaking this and trying to hurt his show, I give him a massive amount of credit for doing what he did. I also think no matter who you are, it's always a risk mentioning executives publicly by name and saying they're trying to sabotage your show. So I give him, and I also think, and I wrote a whole column about this on Monday. I'm glad Pat did it because I think it's incredibly short-sighted for anyone to evaluate Pat's show based on TV ratings in 2024, to ignore the digital aspect of it. I had someone on Twitter said to me about what's his name on Fox? Colin Cowherd was like closing the ratings gap or something. Pat's YouTubes do more than Colin Cowherd's show on FS1. I mean, to just ignore what he does on social media and YouTube, I think is very ignorant. So
that showed the agenda, though.
Right, exactly.
Way, it was like an old school, old guard agenda, which Norby is always associated with. Look, ESPN is doing Pat McAfee and other things because they have to figure out a new way of doing business in the next for the next 5-10 years. And so they're trying things, and that means that some people inside don't like it, but the emphasis on linear numbers was kind of a tell. Right.
I agree. And I think that's why Pat got pissed, and I don't blame him. I also think, if Jimmy Pitaro and Burke Magnus want Pat and wanted Pat, brought Pat on, I know that they love Pat on game day. Norby really, what's his position here? I mean, he can leak numbers and try to sabotage, but what is that going to do?
Well, I mean, it's going to make it more difficult. It might create, God knows what whoever leaked that was thinking and what their agenda is. The problem is that when you're cashing a paycheck from the place, even if you don't agree with it, to actively try and thwart the success and to create speed bumps where there aren't there. I mean, what's the point? Right. I mean, and it really pisses me off, and I'm not going to attach any names, but people who say sometimes to me, I'm trying to do this because I really love the place. Well, if you really love the place, I mean, I'm not trying to sing Kumbaya here, but then just shut your fucking mouth when it comes to being public, because that's the company. It's ridiculous. Keep it inside. Do whatever you want to do inside. But I mean, I don't know that duality.
You're talking about the leaking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, I mean, look, I've had people leak to me. You've had people leak to you. Leaking is, one of the favorite indoor sports at ESPN. Right. But to the degree that they have a nearly $100 million deal with Pat, and he's visible, and it's arguably one of the most expensive, important experiments going on in ESPN right now, to try and create a negative narrative about it. I mean, what the hell? I mean,
there are times I feel like I'm in bizarro world and just the dumbest person on the face of the earth, because I'll see things about Pat's show is a problem. Pat's show isn't doing well. Pat's show on ESPN doesn't work. And I'm like, from what I see as someone who observes this stuff, I think it's doing exactly what ESPN wants. I think the numbers on digital are tremendous. The cachet the show has. This is a show that has, and whatever you think of him, you have to put that aside. He has Aaron Rodgers, J.J. Watt, and Nick Saban on that show every single week. Every top person in sports, media, athlete, coach goes on that show. That show has a tremendous amount of cachet. So it's always bizarre to me whenever I see like a negative spin on it. And I guess outside of saying, oh, Pat's show loses this much of the First Take audience, I'm not sure what negative spin makes sense.
Look, there were people inside ESPN who were trashing 30 for 30 when it started.
Right.
There were people who, I can't even begin to tell you what happened when PTI went on the air. There was basically a revolt because so many people hated it. I think that, look, that's what this is, right? It's not a mathematical equation. So it's easy for people to argue about it. I sometimes get ticked that people inside Bristol are negative about shows that they either didn't invent, develop, or are connected to. So then there's like an us versus them, and they're like so supportive of things that are on their, manifest and that are part of their playbook. And then it's like, it's a competitive thing, and it shouldn't be that way. There's 8,760 hours that ESPN has to put on every year. So why in hell do you have to make it binary?
Is there anything you can tell us that you've heard about, like where, like today, Wednesday, January 10th, where it stands with Pat and Norby? Like, are they going to, I know what the public statements were. We're going to move forward and we're blah, blah, blah. But like, do you think they will try to get on the same page? You think it's leave us alone, we'll leave you alone? Where do you think that's
the biggest mistake that people make in situations like this is that they expect people to change, especially when they're powerful personalities like Pat and Norby. Norby isn't a public figure. Norby isn't on the air. But in Bristol, Norby's like a Pat. He takes up a lot of oxygen. He sits there at, very high in the org chart, and he's got minions underneath him on every level that would take a bullet for him. And by the way, that's how they got their job, or that's how they keep their job. That's all right. Norby knows how to wield power. And so I think that if I'm Burke or Jimmy, am I sitting there thinking that all of a sudden Norby's going to become a huge supporter of Pat's show? No, I don't think so.
Right.
In fact, so many people have, not so many, but, look, more than several people have called me since Pat arrived at ESPN and saying, well, Norby's been saying such negative things about, he's not a fan. And like, we all know how that's going to turn out. So he hasn't made it a secret that he's not a fan of Pat's. And I think that if you're Burke or Jimmy, you just want them to both of them to coexist. They don't have to be best friends, and they don't have to, it's not like Norby's going to come on Pat's show and talk about how great he is.
Right. I don't know Norby. Is he the type of guy, like when that was going down Friday and Saturday and the former ESPN people were coming out basically saying, oh yeah, this is his playbook. He leaks stuff. This is what he does. Does that bother him, or he doesn't give a shit?
if you put an EKG, I'm just guessing, but I'm telling you, I think this is a window into Norby. If you put an EKG monitor on Norby Williamson from the day before all this, the column was leaked or whatever, and I'm not saying he's the one who leaked it, but before the column appeared, all the way through up yesterday, I don't think there would have been anything that would have changed. I don't think his pulse ever got high. I don't think he had any inverted T waves or whatever you want to say about it. But he is no, it's not going to. He's not woe is me. He's not going to second guess himself. He's not going to do any of that stuff.
Last thing on this. I know Marchand has said several times that he doesn't think there's any way Pat lasts 5 years at ESPN. He has the 5-year, $85 million deal reportedly. You think he lasts 5 years there?
Well, look, a lot of people make a big deal of the fact that Pat hasn't lived the life of his contracts at previous places. I think part of that is to be explained that he was getting incredibly popular and he's growing his brand and there were other opportunities and let's just keep taking advantage of them. I don't know if he's going to last 5 years. I don't know what ESPN is going to look like in 5 years. I don't know who's going to own the bloody thing. Who knows, you know?
I also think what doesn't get...
I do know that as we sit here on January 10th, 2024, Pat McAfee doesn't wake up in the morning thinking, how can I get out of this thing? Or how can I screw myself or screw management to the point where I can be let out and go someplace else? I would be very, very surprised if that was the case.
And I think an aspect of this that doesn't get discussed enough is, okay, he left other jobs early, but at this job, he also has game day. Pat loves doing college game day. I think that, that's why I don't think Pat would ever just want to, like you said, I'm in agreement with you here. I don't think he wants to just blow up this ESPN deal less than a year. Like, he loves doing game day. He loves Herb Street. He loves Corso. I don't think that gets talked about enough in the narrative about Pat and ESPN.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And I think that, aside from this latest chapter, I think that his transition to ESPN, which could have been a lot more difficult, basically from a viewer perspective, has been pretty damn good.
Yeah. All right, let's circle back to the Rodgers-Kimmel situation, and then we can do Sopranos and Curb. If Aaron Rodgers would have implied or tried to connect Jimmy Fallon to Jeffrey Epstein, would ESPN have cared?
I think you're still dealing with a huge statement. Now, a lot of effort has been paid to say that Aaron did not accuse Jimmy.
No, he tried to make a connection. Everyone knows what he was doing. It was the vintage Aaron Rodgers.
I mean, look, if it's a public person, who the hell wants to be even mentioned in the same sentence as that? It's a highly provocative, look, I mean, not to sound corny, but we all know that Aaron can throw from the hip. And when he shoots from the hip, it's, it can be deleterious to people who he mentions. And I think that, he probably likes it and that's fine, but I think anybody would have had a problem with it. I think, look, Jimmy had his monologue and took advantage of it for 7.5 minutes Monday night. But I think that the real story here is that Kimmel didn't go to DEFCON 1, didn't say to Bob Iger, look, next week it's either Pat's show or my show, right. Which, he could have done, which would have been a real mess. I think Jimmy Pitara was very effective in dealing with Jimmy Kimmel. And I think that, I don't think Jimmy wants to stand around and talk about this much longer either. So it had its moment, and I don't think it was great for anyone. And but I think that Jimmy Kimmel fighting back the way he did with that tweet saying, shut up or I'm going to sue you, basically, he was allowed to do that. And, obviously, and he stood up for himself.
Now, what did you hear from your sources about like how big of a deal this was inside Disney? Did Pitaro get involved? Did Kimmel go to higher ups, or was it just played out the way
Jimmy Pitaro called Jimmy Kimmel and did, I think, a very good job of dealing with it. Look, you don't, if you're Bob Iger or even if you're Jimmy Pitaro, you don't want this going on. This is there's no good news. There's no upside to this. So I think that everybody kind of did what they had to do, and I think a lot of people, particularly after yesterday's appearance by Aaron, thinks it's in the rearview mirror.
Yeah. I do think it's, it's our world, so we're so in it. I do think though, if you just try to like take a step back, like I do think like people are trying to use this now as like a going forward thing for those Rodgers segments. Like, I don't think anything's going to change. Like, I think Rodgers is going to go on McAfee every week when the season starts, and it's going to be the same thing. Like you said at the beginning,
one thing has changed. If Pat announces today that Aaron is not going to be on the show during the NFL playoffs,
who do you think made that decision?
I think Pat did. Because look, if ESPN said you can't have him on, and if Pat really wanted him to be on, then Pat can listen to them, but he's not going to roll over for them. I mean, maybe he took one for the team. I'm not sure. But
this is all speculation. But so do you think Aaron on Tuesday doing a half hour on Fauci and vaccines and conspiracy theories prompted Pat to say, let's put a lid on this till September?
Yeah. I mean, look, maybe Aaron was exhausted about it. I'm not sure. Maybe he can, but he was like, oh man, I just, this is not fun for me anymore. I need to.
Oh, see, I think he loves it. I think he loves it.
Maybe, but I don't think, I don't think anybody at ESPN would call up Pat and say, you got to take him off, because they know that ultimately he doesn't need to. So it doesn't happen without Pat ultimately. And, but my only point is that something has changed, because if we had said to each other 10 days ago, like, who do you think is going to be one of the most important guests on Pat during the NFL playoffs? He's like, well, like the 4-time MVP. Like, Aaron will have his, perspective out there, and God knows what he's going to say, but it's going to be, important for the show. So I think things have changed.
Yeah, I don't know. Someone has to prove me wrong, but I think Rodgers loves all this. Like, he got 30 minutes to speak about vaccines and conspiracy theories. He loves every week he goes on there and goes, well, I know ESPN's going to pull us off the air now. They've never once pulled him off the air, but he says that every week. Like, I think this is all a game. I think he loves it. I think the mentioning of Mike Foss I think maybe that could have prompted Pat to say, like, okay, it's one thing if Pat's out there killing Norby for leaking, which Pat feels strongly about, but now you have Rodgers, who's a guest on the show, calling out ESPN executives. Maybe, I'm sure. Listen, if Pat pulled the plug on Rodgers for the playoffs, it's not one reason, but I would be willing to bet that was a factor as well.
I mean, look, at the end of the day, there's just two levels to it. Is it fun? Like, remember Howard? You're a Howard fan. Like, when Howard Stern first started, there was people who loved him listen for X, and people who hated him listened even longer. Right. I mean, so is it a cool thing to watch Aaron Rodgers and God knows what he's going to say, and say, you're sitting around, you think, I can't believe he said that. I can't believe he said that. So it gets picked up or whatever. That's cool. But I think on another level, particularly, again, after the morning after the national championship, leading up to the NFL playoffs, you just want to do a freaking good show. You just want to be, really value added. You don't want to, it's not just about saying crazy shit. And this is why
I say Rodgers loves it, because the day before, Rodgers met with the New York media, and when they asked him about the Kimmel stuff, he said, well, you have to tune in tomorrow to Pat McAfee to hear. Yeah. He could have talked about it when he had a press conference on Monday with the New York media.
Well, I think he's being loyal to a show that, he likes Pat and they're paying him $1 million a year. And that's a smart move. My only point is, though, like, it should be at some point about the viewer. And I don't think any viewer wanted to hear what they heard yesterday.
Right. I don't want to make this an Aaron Rodgers thing, but I'll just say this, and you don't even have to respond. But I also think that's a fascinating aspect in this, is that Rodgers uses Pat to put all this stuff out there. Why does he do it on his Twitter account? Why doesn't he do it on Instagram? Like, I think he is using Pat as almost a shield, like doing it on Pat's show. Like, if you think Dr. Fauci intentionally lied to people because he wanted to make money, which is what he said on McAfee, why didn't he say that on his Twitter account? He likes to say it on Pat. Like, because then there's like a layer of protection there, I feel like. And then it's also, then he can go, oh, ESPN's going to pull me off the air, which they've never done. Like, I think it's all a calculated game for Rodgers.
I don't know if he gets much protection, given the fact that nobody's thinking Pat said it or ESPN said it. It's very clear that Aaron said that about Fauci, but I have no idea what Aaron Rodgers' playbook is for his brand at this point.
I think it's just get any attention you can and then play the victim. I think it's so obvious, but that's just my own take on it. All right. So he was supposed to be on the show during the playoffs, and Pat said no. That's interesting. That's an interesting one to me, because that doesn't seem like Pat's MO, but like you said, I guess Tuesday was so bad that change had to come.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't believe ESPN forced Pat into it. I agree. But
I agree.
It doesn't sound right.
All right. Just trying to think if there's any sort of ESPN or media stuff I want to do with you. Do you have any take? It's not ESPN related, but this week we're going to have an NFL game on Peacock only. Do you know what is Peacock NBC just looking to get subs out of this? Does the rating matter? Do you know that, or not your territory?
Yeah, I don't really.
All right.
Look, I mean, when ESPN2 was starting, Bornstein put UNC Duke.
I remember that.
ESPN.
Anarchy.
And, it's a great way of getting yourself known, So I'm sure, I'm sure they're looking forward to it.
Yeah. I think it's going to do better than people think. The NFL ratings this year have been great. Amazon had a strong year with the streaming. I think people are expecting nobody to watch that game, and I just don't think that's going to be the case. I think it's going to do just fine. But
that's a great game, and I think we're all getting used to the fact that more than getting used to the fact that we know where to go and find things, and we're able to. It's not like you got to call your cable operator and wait for the guy to come and put a box on and all this other stuff. You can just do everything pretty easy. So I think it's going to be a pretty important weekend for streamers.
Let me ask you these two quick ESPN questions, and then we'll go to the other things. Inside of Bristol, what do you hear about the feeling about Chris Fowler as the lead college football announcer? It seems that fans don't love it, but I know he does a phenomenal job on tennis, college football, maybe not so much. Is there do you think like he's entrenched in that job forever and there's no issues there? Or do you think there are people inside Bristol maybe sometimes say, I don't know.
I mean, look, Chris just had a new deal recently. Whenever I hear, well, there are some people who don't think, people say that about Chris Berman. People said that about Walter Cronkite when,
right.
I don't know. It's like, who are these people and whatever. I don't think anybody can discount the fact that Chris Fowler's done, a hell of a job. Maybe they don't like him as much as so-and-so, but really, we talk about Joe Buck, we talk about Troy, we talk about Tony, we talk about Al. Doesn't it just come with the jobs Bob Costas? There are people who, claim they hated Bob Costas. There are people who think he's the most important, anchor or MC or whatever role he's playing of the generation. It's very, very hard to get people to agree on that. But I mean, you look at the Heisman's over the last, 15, 16 years ceremonies. I mean, Chris I think he just comes and delivers.
I don't know.
People say it about Herbie. I mean, I don't know. What more do you want from the guy?
I don't think Herbie's the issue in that booth. But and ESPN, I would hope they're completely over the moon with the coup they pulled to get Buck and Aikman, because that is the best booth, and that booth struggled for a long time.
It's a great booth. It's an expensive booth, but you know what?
You get what you pay for.
Yeah, but you know what? They finally don't have to think about it every year.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about Hail Mary passes. Rush Limbaugh was in the Monday night booth.
He did studio. He did the studio.
I mean, but I'm just saying that he was doing Monday night, and you think there's nothing that Pat has done that compared to some of the things that Rush said. So I was thinking Tony was in the booth too, which was audacious.
Right. And Dennis Miller.
So, look, sometimes if you're in those jobs, you want to try things. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of margin for error. And so if it screws up, and particularly if somebody says something really bad, then it takes on a life of its own. It just goes with the territory, man.
All right, let's get to the good stuff. Curb comes back February 4th. It's the final season. Do you know why Larry has decided to hang it up?
I mean, look, he disappeared for several years at a time. I think that if you're Larry David, you get to live your life the way you want to live it. I think that, look, the last time I spoke to him about it, he said he was going to keep on doing it until it wasn't fun anymore, until he didn't have any ideas about it. He certainly, you can tell that they all enjoy doing it. You and I could probably argue about whether or not the last couple seasons are as strong as, some of the seasons beforehand. But I do think that it's amazing to think that we're in 2024 and a new season's coming out and people are looking forward to it, and I think the cast has been very, it's kind of bittersweet to know that this really is the end, because many years they would finish a season and they never knew, even if it was like 3, 4, 5 years ago and they hadn't done another one, they thought, well, you never know. Larry could wake up and want to do another one. And sure enough, he did.
Right.
So
there was one time where the gap was like a 10-year gap, right?
9
or something.
Years.
9
years. Yeah, I believe.
So Jerry Seinfeld at one of his stand-up shows, this was maybe a month ago, 6 weeks ago, got a question from someone in the audience asking him about the Seinfeld finale, which underwhelmed a lot of people. I actually liked it, but the majority of people didn't love the Seinfeld finale. And Jerry probably didn't think he was being recorded, because you usually are not allowed to record at these things, said, Larry and I are going to do something about the Seinfeld finale, but it's top secret, not allowed to say anything. Cut to, the show's coming back February 4th for the final season. I have to believe that's what Jerry was referring to. And I don't know if
you mean within the context of Curb.
Yes.
Well, remember something, though. I think it was stupendous that Larry already did a Seinfeld reunion show in the context of Curb.
Brilliant.
Which was
beyond brilliant.
Beyond brilliant. So well done. And my gosh, I mean, the Funkhauser joke alone while they're getting their food before the read-through was worth that, so I don't know. That would be interesting. I hadn't
because what Jerry said, it was specifically about the Seinfeld finale. So listen, it could be Larry spends this season trying to fix the Seinfeld finale. He could spend this season, maybe something happens where someone berates him about it could be anything, but I'm just putting two and two together here, and
So I'm just thinking about the two lines of Larry's, these two major shows in Larry's life, right?
Yeah.
So Seinfeld and Curb, they've already kind of crossed before because there were like 5-6 episodes. It wasn't just an episode, right? I mean, there was like the whole idea and then getting the cast back together.
The table reads were great. Table reads are great.
Everything.
Yeah.
So he's already done that. So if you're Larry, you're thinking for the final season of Curb, do I want to conflate Seinfeld again with Curb? Maybe that could be the ultimate.
And it could just be a one episode. It doesn't have to be the theme of the season. It could just be maybe an episode where him and Larry are getting coffee, talking about the Seinfeld film. It just seemed like there's going to be something. Could be little, could be big. You don't know.
I will say that Larry and Jerry don't need Curb if they want to do something.
Oh, that's
They could have, I mean, you could have like a 1 hour special on Netflix. You could have, you could do whatever you wanted to do. It's not like they're, short on places to do it, but that might be a hell of a way of going out with Curb as well.
Now we're taping this on January 10th. Today is the actual 25th anniversary of the first episode of The Sopranos on HBO, when AJ famously said to Tony and Carmela, "So what now? No fucking ziti," when Livia couldn't make it to the house. It's going to be a weird, morbid question to start with, but if James Gandolfini were still alive, do you think there would have been a reboot? Do you think there would have been a movie? Do you think they would have brought the show back in some way, shape, or form? Or do you think even if Gandolfini was still with us, David Chase isn't that type of person?
Well, it's a tough question. I think that in the years after Sopranos went off the air, James Gandolfini was doing features. He did a brilliant documentary. He was certainly in no hurry to go back to Tony Soprano. Might there have been something? Maybe. I mean, look, David wound up doing a prequel movie. But I think, look, I started my HBO book, the prologue, with The Sopranos and an effort that was made to help Jimmy Gandolfini at the time with his problems there. And I just think that I think it's the greatest drama. I think it was the most important show that HBO ever produced. And I think that when you watch it now, you can't help but be caught up in the same way as you did when you watched it then. I mean, I'm sorry, but everything holds up.
Everything. It's amazing because HBO has been rerunning it on one of the HBO 2. They've been rerunning it the entire weekend.
Yeah.
And I was kind of pissed. Like on Sunday, I was watching football and I was like, I want to go to but outside of Sunday, I've been watching it every single day, all day, just leaving it on the TV. And it's just, I've seen it so many times. It's 25 years old. You cannot help but be completely riveted.
In fact, one of the things that happens, by the way, isn't it funny that I'm sure you, like me, I have the complete Sopranos DVD set with all the extras and all. You can turn it on anytime, and it's on Max. But the fact that they're running it on HBO too is like,
it's a gift. It's like a surprise. It's like a gift.
It's so ridiculous. But I think that one of the things that's happening for me, and this has happened in the ensuing years, because I don't think there's ever been a period of, I don't even think I go a year without at least going back and watching Whitecaps or going Amarfu or like, I don't know, some of my favorite episodes. I think that one of the things that's happening right now is you go back and you watch it and you think, not only does it hold up, but you get a chance to like pay attention to things that they did and how well it was. And you think, of course, look, The Wire and Mad Men and Breaking Bad. And of course, there's, and shows before Sopranos. So it's not like this is the only quality 1 hour drama. But I think that if you watch Sopranos now, particularly if you get a chance, since you're kind of familiar with, that episode, you get a chance to pay more attention to like, even like the music cues or the framing of a shot, or, it's just like you start to see things in deeper and deeper levels, and you realize just how phenomenal it was.
Yeah. Yeah. I was picking up on things I never picked up on, even watching it this weekend, and I've seen it so many times.
There's a scene,
a
season ender, where Tony goes to Johnny Sack's house. There's snow, and they're kind of making up, and they're trying to talk about, pushing Phil into the background. Yeah. And when they come down the steps, the way that the scene is framed, you have Johnny Sack's backyard and that big expanse of snow, and you're not thinking about it. It's just perfect because you're just thinking that's where it is. But you can tell afterwards, knowing what's going to happen. Look at the depth of field. Look at the way they focus things. Look at the way that the framing of that scene is telling the story. It's like, it's part of the script, obviously. And then all of a sudden, there's this beautiful hug between them, and Tony sees the FBI agents running in the snow with rifles and their FBI jackets. It's incredible. And I think the stuff between Tony and Melfi, the scene where Melfi is raped in that stairwell is still, one of the most horrific, disturbing, scenes of that kind ever captured on television. And man, oh man, it just, if you watch something over and over again, and every time you see it, it still packs, it's still as powerful as you first saw it. That's saying something.
And to this day, what's going to happen. But when you watch that episode with that final scene where she's debating whether or not to tell Tony that she was raped, and she doesn't, and it just cuts abruptly. Like, you're still thinking like there's a chance, like it gets into you. So you think, oh, she's going to tell him, and she's not telling him. You've seen it on, and you still think, and the way it just ends there.
The way she says no.
Right. The
way she says no, it's incredible.
Yep, absolutely. Well, I've enjoyed it. HBO should just have a channel where they run it 24/7, 365. Just keep running it, because if it's there, it's a night. Like you said, you can put it on any time. But I love that it's just there. Flip it on in between games. This, that. So
for people who may not, I'm sure that there are people out there who haven't watched the show. Or
so many people watched it when COVID started who had not. Like COVID, I saw articles where it got this massive bump during COVID, where people binged it. I'm sorry, go ahead.
But for people who may not have seen it in a long time, or don't like the violence or whatever, if they just want to put on Whitecaps, which I believe was the end of season 4, whatever, you watch that one episode and you are going to see 2 of the best performances in an episodic show on television of all time. What Edie Falco and James Gandolfini did in that show, not to mention the brilliant writing and the incredible roller coaster that their marriage goes through in the context of that one episode. That's just, I don't know. That's just otherworldly.
It is, absolutely.
But there's a dinner tonight, an HBO dinner tonight. There are a bunch of things going on, and for people who are going to be watching the Emmys are going to be doing something special.
Oh, nice! For the 25th anniversary.
To say that or not? Maybe it's been out. I don't know. Whatever. But
it's the 25th anniversary. You'd think the Emmys would acknowledge it. So I'm glad you can confirm that.
Yeah.
All right, Jim, appreciate it. Thanks for all the info on ESPN, and enjoy the final season of Curb. February. Is it coming back the night of the Super Bowl? Is it the 4th? Do I have that right?
I think it's February 4th.
That's interesting. That's a Super Bowl. What a post Super Bowl gift.
It's either counter programming or HBO realizing, what, people are going to watch it on Max,
watch it.
Whatever.
Yeah,
we're going to do it when we want to do it.
February 4th, yeah. I hope the Super Bowl's not close. Let's get a Niners blowout of whoever, and I'm off to Max.
No, the Niners aren't going to, even if it was the Niners and the Ravens, I don't think the Niners are going to blow out the Ravens.
We'll see. I think
Let's
the
just
Niners.
keep everyone. All I care about is keeping everyone healthy, because there's nothing worse than a postseason where
I
teams
agree.
have incredible individuals that they need to, count on. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
All right, Jim. Thanks a lot. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you, man.
Be well. All right.
Good to see you.
Take care. You too. All right, joining me now, as he does every week from WFAN Radio, SNY TV in New York, my buddy Sal Licata for our Traina Thoughts segment. Sal, how's it going?
I'm looking forward to the postseason this weekend.
How do you feel about a game being on Peacock only?
Look, do I love it? No, but ultimately, suck it up if you're a football fan. Either go to a bar, go to your friend's house, or pay the $6. It's not the $6. It's the hassle of downloading the app, the password, signing in, the finding out which input it is. I get it. I understand the pain in the ass. However, suck it up. It's 2024. Pay the $6. I've already canceled my subscription. It will end after the end of January, so I'll get to watch the game. So it's not that big of a deal.
Okay, so I texted Sal a few days ago and said, "Do you have Peacock?" And he said yes. I was going to say, "Come over and watch the game if you don't." And I was surprised you said yes, because I remember you saying you canceled WWE Network, which is on Peacock. So when did you add it back?
I did cancel it. It was going to expire, I think, at the end of December. And then after you had alerted me to the streaming only playoff game, I was like, fuck, I got to do this for at least one more month. So I signed back on for one more month, and then I just went back and canceled it last night. So it'll be good through the end of January.
Okay. So you know how you get crazy about Twitter sometimes?
Yeah.
All the time?
Yeah.
I feel like you anytime I tweet about the streaming nonsense, because it really makes me want to delete my account, because all I get is people about just pay the money, or how do you not have this, or what? And I just have, this is going to be very boring for everyone out there listening, but I just want to say this for clarification, and I'm going to cut this video and I'm going to post it every time someone says that to me. I pay for Netflix, Peacock, Hulu, ESPN Plus, Disney Plus, Amazon Prime, Apple Music, Max, Apple TV. So go fuck yourselves. I get it all. My issue is not that I don't have it or that I have to pay for it. I have it and I pay for it. My issue is I do not want to watch a game on streaming. Jesus Christ.
That was great.
Now,
yeah.
Here's my other problem. And it's a big problem. I don't love the games this weekend from a betting standpoint. I don't love the game. I can't, I don't have a game where I'm I'm betting that. I'm betting that. I don't love the board. And it's a problem.
Yeah, but you're going to bet them anyway. You'll figure your way out, right?
There's one game I know I'm going to bet. I will bet the over 51.5 in the Rams-Lions game.
What's the spread in that game?
I believe it's 3, but I'll double check because I don't want to be wrong. Because if you're wrong,
I have not, as you can tell, I have not gone into detail yet as far as looking at the games and looking at the lines. I'm more concerned about
the Lions are -3. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm more concerned about logistics of making sure I watch these games. So get the house hunting stuff. I mean, it just.
So do we want to discuss the house hunting and then get into the games?
You have no idea what I'm dealing with today during the radio show and right before taping this podcast. You have no idea.
Break down for me the house hunting situation, and then we'll figure out how it ties into the games. Then we'll talk about the games.
So we haven't looked at houses in a few weeks because of Christmas and New Year's and all that stuff, and there hasn't been much on the market. So I forget the last that I told you, but we've did I tell you that the house that I said no way to, they came back to us and we're under contract for that. Did I tell you that part? I might have told you that off the air. No, whatever. I don't need to get onto that here, but there's nothing set right now. We still need to look for a house. Some houses became available this week, so we're planning on going Saturday morning. Now, this is to Jersey.
Okay.
So it takes
Saturday
2 hours there. Right. 2 hours back. My wife already saying I don't want to do it first thing in the morning, maybe 10 o'clock. So now I'm like, all right, but I get the playoffs going on.
Let me just interrupt you. Browns Texans 4:30 p.m. Go ahead, continue.
Right. So, and then I'm trying to justify. I battle with myself back and forth, and I'm like, well, I don't really need to. I'm talking with my radio show partner BT. I'm like, I don't really need to watch Browns Texans, do I? Like, we did our work with the Jets and Giants. I love the playoffs and I'll watch it, but like, I don't need to be locked in. But I do want to be locked in. I want to bet the game. I want to sit there and watch. It's my two favorite weekends in all of sports: wild card weekend and divisional round. But I have to look at these houses. Now, there was a wrench thrown in to the plans. Are you ready for this? I don't even like. This is such like I can't even believe this is happening.
I love a good wrench.
A house is listed that we want to see. Looks great on paper. Looks great in pics. We want to see it. Set it up. Trying to set it up for early Saturday morning. It's not even officially like on the market yet. And our agent trying to set up a time to go view this fucking house is saying that they may not even have a showing because they're already getting blind offers on the house. Blind offers. People are going to pay for a house, you know what that costs, without going to see it. So
why don't you then just eliminate that then? Why even get involved in that?
Because it looks great and because there are no other options and because we need a house. So I'm at their mercy. Believe me, I don't like not being in control. I would like to tell them, fuck you. I'm not going to pay for a house or bid for a house. So what we did was they're trying to move up the process. We actually are putting in an offer contingent on us being able to see it. And we have to see it tomorrow. As we tape this Wednesday, we have to now go see it Thursday. So I'm on the radio from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. I have to be there in Jersey at 3, meet my wife who's going to drive from Long Island. My mother's going to have to watch the kid. My wife's going to come meet me at 3 o'clock. I see this house for a half hour, then go back into the city so I could go to SNY and my wife goes home. Just to see this house. They can't wait 2 days to show it.
Oh, so why can't you see this house on Saturday?
Because it might not be around by Saturday.
Okay.
They didn't even want to show it in general. I guess now they're showing it. I don't know what's going on, but like,
see, this is where I feel like sometimes I'm not a good friend because I want to say to you, like, when you tell me this, all that's in my head is there's no way this is going to work. There's no way you're going to be able to leave the fan at 2, get to the house showing at 3, and then get back. What time do you have to be back in the city for SNY?
4:30.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way.
Well, it's not like seeing a house takes an hour. I should be able to, if MapQuest is somewhat, or Google Maps somewhat accurate, I should be able to get there before 3. I get off the radio 2, out of the city before 3. I should be there, and then I probably have to leave there no later than 3:30.
Did you just say you still use MapQuest?
No, I don't know where that came from. I use Google Maps.
Okay. All right. Because that would have been a whole other subject. Yeah. All right. So if you're going to see this house tomorrow, what's going on Saturday?
Well, that's the thing. We have one other house scheduled, but I'm not going there on Super Wild Card Saturday to see one house, I don't think.
Can you go at like 10 in the morning? 10 and 11 in the morning?
Yeah, we could, but now like we're driving all the way there to see one house. You know what I mean? Like I think right now the focus is this current house, and then we got to make a decision come Saturday.
Let me ask you this question. I'm just curious. When you have to drive to Jersey to look at a house from where you currently reside, Long Island, it's a 2.5 hour drive?
2 hours? Usually 2 hours.
2 hours. Yeah. What do you and the wife do in the car in terms of music? Radio, preset music on the phone? Like, what is there an argument? Do you like different, like 2 hours in the car with a person is rough. If you don't like the same music or you can't agree. I mean, I'm sure you're not listening to the SI Media podcast. What goes on for the music situation?
That largely depends on the mood of my 2.5-year-old daughter. Because when daddy wants to play something or listen to something, she sometimes could be okay. And then there's other times it starts to, and then my wife starts with the shut that off. And I'm like, but I'm listening to it. And she goes, the baby's here. So now I get the daughter with the fussing in the back, and my wife telling me to shut it off. So then I shut it off. So it's a combination of some great conversation. It's a combination of delightful conversation with my lovely wife for 2 hour car ride. Sometimes a little music. Sometimes, if I need to listen to sports talk, I do that.
Now,
or a game.
Will you see your house on Sunday or Saturday? The only day you'll do this?
No, I refuse to go on. And Sunday's 1:00 start. No chance.
That's why I asked.
Yeah, there's no way. It would have to be like an emergency of all emergencies, and even then, what's the 1:00 game Sunday? Bills Steelers,
Pittsburgh,
right?
Buffalo. Yeah.
I'm into that game.
Let me ask you this. Let's say you could only watch one of the 6 games this weekend for whatever reason.
Yep.
What's the game you would pick?
I think it's Miami, Kansas City, and I think Miami's going to win the game. I really feel like the Dolphins are going to win. The Chiefs are there for the taking. Everybody's done with the Dolphins now because they blew the division and choked it away. 10-degree weather. What's the spread in that game? I haven't even seen it.
Chiefs -4.
See, that's telling to me because if it were as bad, if it were vintage Kansas City, bad weather, Miami, it should be 7. I think the Dolphins are going to win that game. So that's probably the one I'm looking forward to seeing most.
The one I'm looking forward to the most is Rams-Lions.
Yep. That's the late
Sunday night.
Yeah, I love it.
Now, Chiefs-Dolphins, what I like about that, of course, that's the Peacock only. So I cannot wait. Oh my God, I cannot wait for everyone to flip out on Saturday night. So many people still don't realize what the deal is with that game. I can't wait. Anyway, they're saying it's going to be like below 0 for that game.
Right. I love that. I love watching bad weather games.
Yeah. Yeah. That adds. Now, here's something else people need to know about this Peacock situation in NBC. So NBC/Peacock, they have 3 games this weekend. So the first game of the entire playoff weekend on Saturday at 4:30, Browns-Texans, is going to be on NBC. And that's going to be Noah Eagle and Todd Blackledge. This is where they screwed Al Michaels out of a game on that one. The Peacock game at 8 o'clock, Chiefs-Dolphins, Peacock only, is going to be Tirico with Jason Garrett.
Why? Why Garrett?
Because the next night, Rams-Lions, Sunday at 8 o'clock, is Tirico and Collinsworth. So I guess they don't want Collinsworth working 2 nights in a row. Somehow it's okay, though, for Tirico to work 2 nights in a row. But
yeah, why? It makes no sense.
So you're going to have a game. Think about this. You're going to have a game that's on Peacock only. And then the analyst for that game is going to be Jason Garrett. There's going to be a shitstorm coming NBC/Peacock's way that night. I can tell you that.
I think that's a huge mistake. They should have just figured it out with Al.
They screwed Al big time. You know what I was thinking about?
Or just go with Tirico and Collinsworth. Like, no offense
they
to
don't
Garrett,
want him doing 2. No one does. And they don't want to do 2 nights in a row, I guess, of Collinsworth. That's so. I was thinking on Sunday, week 18, the final week of the season, I was thinking when I was watching the Titans-Jaguars game, it really is a travesty that Kevin Harlan doesn't get an NFL playoff game. Now, there's nothing they can do. He works for CBS. CBS has Nance. CBS has Ian. So it's not like you can quibble and say, oh, well, one of those guys shouldn't do it. It's just a shame that Harlan doesn't get an NFL playoff game because when you hear that voice, that game feels big.
Agreed. And I love that and I'm not even the biggest Harlan fan, but he does have that feel, that playoff feel.
Yes.
Or special big game, whatever, big game feel.
So the Browns are given 2.5 at the Texans. The total is 44.5. You don't love that, I can tell.
No, if I had to, I'm taking the Browns, I think. I like their defense.
You love the Chiefs -4 against the Dolphins.
No, I love the Dolphins.
Oh, you love the Dolphins. Wait,
yes.
Why do you love... I thought you said... Oh, I was not paying attention earlier. Why do you love the Dolphins?
I think Miami's going to win the game. Chiefs are there for the taking. I don't think Chiefs are as good as they've been in recent years. They're different. They're more physical with Pacheco. They have major issues all year long throwing the football. I think it's an obvious.
The Dolphins have a million injuries on defense.
I understand that Miami's banged. Well, that's exactly the reason. Everybody's off of the Miami bandwagon now. They choked the division away. They lost the game to the Bills. It's frigid weather in Kansas City. There's no way Miami could win. I think Miami, whoever, if it was Miami, if it was Pittsburgh, whoever was playing in Kansas City, this is more anti-Chiefs than it is pro-Dolphins. But I still believe in the Dolphins' superstars on offense there, assuming that Hill and Waddle will be healthy and with Shane running the football. I think Miami's going to win that game. Okay. Win it, not even with the spread. They're beating. The Chiefs are going down.
All right. So you got a money line. Now, Bills are giving 10 to the Steelers. The total is 36.5.
Isn't that supposed to be bad weather, too? I'll probably take the points in that.
Well, it's Buffalo. I mean, it's going to be bad weather.
Yeah. Give me the points with the Steelers there.
Mason Rudolph, okay.
Lose and cover.
And no TJ Watt. Cowboys, 7.5 against the Packers.
I mean, that's a lot of points. I don't know.
Total is 50.5. Won't partake.
What do you think in that game? You have any of these? You like any of these games? Yeah, you said you don't really like.
I would love to be able to tease the Cowboys with something, but I can't even find a game to tease them with.
Now, would you tease them with the over? Like, say, take the Cowboys and tease the over? Okay.
I don't do same game. I don't like that. Maybe, you know what I would tease? What I'll probably do is I'll tease the Cowboys with the under in the Pittsburgh-Buffalo game because I don't think the Steelers are going to score.
Okay. Right, so Cowboys are going to win, but it's too many points. I'm with you on that.
Yeah. Lions are -3 against the Rams, 51.5. I'll bet the over in that game.
I think the Rams are better. But I don't want to bet against. Like, I'm all for the underdog Lions at home. Finally won a division. I want to root for the Lions. I don't like the Rams, but I think the Rams are better.
All right. And then Monday night is the pig game, Eagles at Bucks.
Gross.
And the line is Philly -3.
I don't know which way to go in that. Probably Philly. I can't take the Bucks. The Bucks stink.
That's the thing. So everyone is completely off the Eagles bandwagon, and rightfully so, because they just completely. If anyone has watched the Bucks the last couple of weeks, as I have, unfortunately, the Bucks are terrible.
Yeah, they stink. You can't bet that. If I lose that game, I cannot lose it signing with the Bucks. I'm sorry. I'll go down with Philadelphia.
They beat the Panthers 9-0.
Yeah, I watched.
They lost the week before to the Saints and have just completely gone in the tank. I mean, they won the week before against the Jaguars, but they stink, the Jaguars.
They're not any good. They have good receivers. Baker Mayfield,
I have to think just Jalen Hurts alone.
Yep.
But
the question is, are the Eagles toast? Like, is it broken so badly that they can't be fixed?
I think they are, but I think they're playing the one team where they can squeak by with like a 23-20 win or something like that. So.
Agreed.
All right. I don't think I really have anything else. It's been a quiet week. I don't really have any
No, we did
topics.
A lot there.
Yeah, we did a lot there.
All right.
Yeah, that's it.
Happy
good luck.
Super Wildcard weekend. Thank you. I need it.
Good luck. So house hunting Thursday, playoffs over the weekend.
Yeah.
All right. Take it easy, Sal.
All right. See you later.
All right. My many thanks to Jim Miller and Sal Licata. Hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did, make sure you subscribe to SI Media with Jimmy Traina if you are not a subscriber. And if you enjoyed it, leave a review on Apple. It is greatly appreciated. The subscription and the review help us tremendously. So please do that. All right. That wraps it up. We'll see you next week. Stay safe and take care.